Time has passed. 463 days have passed since the start of this project. Today, I will show you how to maintain an aquarium and explain some tricks that help plants grow. In general, an aquarium requires weekly maintenance. You need to change the water, siphon the gravel, wipe the aquarium glass of algae, maybe clean the filter or trim the plants. But this aquarium is different. Not only because it has no filter, but also because some plants grow without the addition of carbon dioxide or any other kind of fertilizer. A golden rule: when doing aquarium maintenance, regardless of whether the aquarium is with a filter or without a filter, is that the maintenance should not be done all at once. An example is the following. You haven't had time to maintain your aquarium for a long time. And then, when you do have time, you do it aggressively. You change a large amount of water, trim the plants, and clean the filter. No, don't do that. It is best to do all these operations on different days, not on the same day. But first, I'll give you a similar example. Many people make the same mistake when feeding their fish. For various reasons, you may not have time to feed your fish for a few days. And then when you do feed your fish, you feed them more food because you think the fish are really hungry. If you do this, your fish will live shorter. They may get sick or even die. Remember, if you feed your fish after a long period of not eating, do not give them too much food, even feed them less food than you usually give them. Returning to aquarium maintenance, the same rule applies. If you haven't changed the water for a long time, when you do change the water, don't change a larger amount of water. Related to this, many people notice that the aquarium looks better if the plants have grown more beautifully if you forgot to change the water for a week or two. Well, that's normal. Remember, in this case, when changing the water, don't overdo it. Generally, 10–30% of the water volume is changed every 1 or 2 weeks. Larger water changes can only be done if you have certain problems with the aquarium. In this aquarium, there are no water changes. But still, the water evaporates from the aquarium and the water level drops. For this reason, I have to add water to the aquarium. The water I no longer drink doesn't go to waste. It ends up in the aquarium. I drink both tap water and purchased water. So I don't do anything to remove water from the aquarium. I just add water. This way of adding water to the aquarium more often, but in small amounts, has several advantages. For this aquarium, the main advantage is that it cannot cause imbalances in the ecosystem. Sometimes I forget or don't have time to add water. So I take a cup of water from the tap and add it to the aquarium. That's all I do, and it replaces the water change. I made a video, this video, where I explained how I set up this ecosystem, and I also showed why you have to do some water changes in the beginning before you stop doing water changes. I don't siphon gravel, but the snails in this aquarium are quite numerous and they seem a bit fat to me. Fat snails, is it even possible? And to surprise you again, look who is eating green hair algae in this aquarium. Excluding the species of snails considered invasive, there are also a few nerite snails and a few lady pink snails which may be a bit hungry. I say maybe they are a little hungry because they are competing for the same food with red cherry shrimp and fish, dwarf corridoras and otocinclus catfish. So 100 snails from 7 species, a few dozen red cherry shrimp, 8 dwarf cory, and 6 otto catfish compete to eat the algae and dead leaves. There is not as much debris on the bottom of the aquarium as I expected. Maybe if I used sand instead of gravel or a lighter colored gravel, the debris would be more visible. I was trying to film the dirt when I noticed something moving in the gravel. But a fish also noticed it. I watched the fish's behavior and noticed that they were hunting for something in the gravel. I searched on Google. I wanted some help with what happens with dead leaves or fish poop in the aquarium. Instead, I found this. Decomposing plant leaves. Benefits. Plant leaves can provide a natural source of nutrients, such as nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, for aquatic plants and beneficial microorganisms. It says exactly the same about fish poo. But something else caught my attention. Considerations. If not properly decomposed, fish poo can release harmful nutrients like ammonia, nitrates, and nitrites, which are toxic to fish. It's essential to maintain adequate biological filtration and regular water changes to prevent these issues. So it says it can cause. Maybe. I say this because in this aquarium, I don't use a filter, and I don't do any water changes. Well, in this case, how is it possible? Why don't ammonia, nitrates, and nitrites kill my fish? I'm not a scientist. I'll give you a simple answer. The aquarium behaves like an ecosystem. You can say this about each element separately. The plants and the substrate act as a filter, fish poo, dead leaves, shrimp, snails. But I like to see everything as a whole, an ecosystem. The conclusion so far is that the maintenance of this ecosystem consists of the water that I add randomly. It takes me about 10 seconds each time I do it. But once every 2-3 months, I allocate 30-40 minutes to clean the aquarium. That is, I remove the dead leaves with a tweezers, collect the algae from the aquarium, clean the plants of algae, trim the plants. We are not at the end. I am going to show you some tricks about plants. But before that, if you appreciate my work in making this video, you can give it a like. If not, You can write a comment on what I can improve or what you want to see in the future on this YouTube channel. Thank you. First, I remove the floating plants. Cut off the dry leaves and remove the algae from them as much as possible. I will throw away some of the plants because there are too many. Then I pick the big pieces of plants. This stem is all that's left after I cut a leaf from this plant. This is what the leaf looked like 10 days ago, right after cutting. And this is what it looked like 5 days ago. I take the algae using tweezers. And cut off a few more leaves. It is important that all plants receive enough light. So even though plants that grow on the surface of the water are more beautiful, light must also reach plants with slower growth. It may look good when I use only tweezers, but in reality I use my hands a lot to pick up pieces of plants or algae. I stirred the water a little, and you can see a lot of debris in the water. This plant is one of the new ones planted this year. You can barely see the red color on this plant. It has algae, and many of its leaves have melted. But you can see that new plants have emerged from the stem of the plant. I will leave the old stem with a new plant growing. Here is another new plant. And this is the top of the old plant. I removed the leaves with algae and you can see that the substrate is very, very, very rich in gases. Another way to help plants is to remove other plants around them that compete for the same nutrients. I'm not sure if it applies to this plant that I removed, but many plants, in order to survive, have created a system by which they eliminate substances around themselves that inhibit the growth of other plants around them. So, a plant isolated from other plants will always grow better than if it is in close proximity to another plant, especially if they are of different species. There are some situations when you can't do anything. Plants don't grow as well without the addition of carbon dioxide and fertilizers. But if you clean them of dead leaves or algae, they have a better chance than if you don't. There is a possibility that they will grow faster in height to have more light. I still keep the idea that I have been repeating. Currently, plants consume more and faster nutrients than the ecosystem can regenerate. If I think about algae, it is good, since there are few algae now. If I think about plants, I am convinced that those that cannot adapt or adapt more difficultly will not survive in the near future. If you've watched this far, I suggest other videos about this aquarium. Thank you.